Today we see one of the most mediocre vehicles in World of Tanks, and one that I used to really love within the game, but it's kind of gone to pot, and I just don't find that the Centurion Action X, which is the British tier 10 medium, all too good. But the whole point is to showcase it to you guys, and although it is not necessarily the best overall, it can still have some really good results, and you don't always have to play these overpowered ones, and sometimes a bit of something else can be really nice to have. But remember, this is of course my own opinion, and I'll be interested to see what you guys think about the Centurion Action X. This is one of two tier 10 British mediums. You of course have the Action X, and you also have the FV4202, which is my preferable option out of the two of them. I just think that the Action X is the better one, but yeah, we'll see exactly why that is as we go throughout this this replays. But we've got two of them here for you. I've been hanging on to one replay for a while, and I decided to actually try and get another one whilst playing this thing, but it actually ended up being a lot harder than I was expecting, as I was dealing more damage in tier 8 tanks at the moment, especially when you compare all of the amount of Centurion AVREs that are rolling around at the moment in tier 10. So it can be very difficult to come up against them when you're in something like the Centurion Action X, and when there is 5 on every team, it's just not actually fun at all. But that isn't the topic of today's video, and if you do have any questions regarding the Action X that are kind of in addition to this, you can always ask me in the comment section down below, and I'll try my best. But what I feel that happens with the Action X is that you get into this kind of position where you're not really good at any one thing in particular. Like, you are not exceptional at being able to spot, since this tank is huge. The camo value on it is not particularly very good, so you get spotted a lot of the time. And then when you combine it with the fact that during update 6.0, all of the view range perks, all of the bonuses to view range and camo basically got buffed, you end up with a tank that is just a little bit lackluster, and you can definitely see it with the Action X, and so you get spotted all of the time. Basically, every single time you spot someone, you're probably already spotted, so not ideal. But it does allow you still with the view range to spot opponents. You just have to be aware that, you know, you're probably never going to remain undetected when you're playing in this thing, and that is really annoying, and it means that a lot of the time you're kind of shut out of making certain plays. And when you are this big, you do have the problem of not being able to consistently like avoid shells as well, so you're not really going to be able to bounce anything, and that can be a big problem as well. But in this replay, we've kind of done as you'd expect. I mean, it's nothing spectacular in terms of the amount of damage that we've done. 2,000 in a tier 10 is definitely not amazing. But of course, this replay in particular was just more about the kind of overall nature. You can get some assistance, you just have to play it very well, and you can't really rely on it. And that's something that I wanted to kind of let you guys know, is that you can see a ton of videos on YouTube that are like, I can show you personally like some 7 or 8k damage games in the Centurion Action X, but is it realistic of the vehicle? No, you're probably not going to be able to deal that much damage for the most part, and often you have to get very lucky with the opponents that you're facing. Maybe they're less experienced, and of course then maybe you can take advantage of it, but it usually then comes down to you're just more skilled at the game, as opposed to the tank actually being that good. And that's one thing that I kind of hate. But of course, with the medium tanks, it has very good accuracy, as you'd expect from a medium. And that is really nice. You're able to kind of push forward, get into a nice position, get into a groove, and be able to farm opponents. Like the Super Conqueror here, we're just going for that lower plate. We want to try and get at least one into him. I was kind of tracking him, hoping some of the teammates would be able to hit him. They don't, unfortunately. It does kind of suck. But one thing that you guys should always realise is that the main difference between the Action X and the FV4202 is that this is the tank that has the premium rounds, essentially. The FV does indeed have premium rounds as well, but they don't actually increase penetration. Instead, they're the British Hesh rounds, which deal more damage, and that's why I much prefer that tank over this one. Is because although the heat rounds of this thing, they're really nice, they have high penetration, you can pen most heavies through the front, even if you don't look at their weak point. The problem is that, you know, you can pretty much pen them anyway with the standard APCR, so it's not that much of a benefit. and it kind of sucks. Now I'd try push forward. We want to get a little bit of extra damage since the game is good, but of course there's always one capping Gorilla 15 in the base for some reason, thinking that he's going to get loads of XP. And as you'll see at the end of this battle, we'll see exactly how much XP this Gorilla 15 did for actually capping in the game. And I can assure you he's definitely not within the top 3 and probably not even in the top 5. You can see we've gone down significantly since getting 3 marks, but that's probably because we haven't played this tank in a long time, and you can see I was trying to find out who it was. It was the Gorilla in the cap circle. But let's jump into the next replay and see what a more kind of brawling thing happens with the Action X. So this is the older gameplay of the two that we had, and that is actually one that I felt showed what this tank can be like in the right sort of position, and that, you know, it doesn't always have to be the typical overpowered mediums in the game that you'll see. It doesn't always have to be an autoloader, as you'll see with most of these kind of top tier mediums being the better ones. You're looking at things like the Progetto, that sort of thing. You know, the autoloaders, the TVP T5051, always very good. But this one is still a very good performer. It has a lot of DPM, you have a good reload, you've got great accuracy, you have a decent turret if you can make it work, but this has a pretty prominent cupola, which is quite easy to hit, and so people can pen you quite reliably. It's not that good, to be honest, and yeah, it is quite bulky, that you might not see from some of the other tanks, but it is British, so why am I not surprised that the cupola is gigantic and of course pennable. And of course, being British, it has that huge hull armor that is basically just a pen me here. And that is really sucks. You can see me here trying to get this E100. We go for the tracking shot. I'm just basically trying to keep him in the same position, resetting his tracks. If hopefully our team can get a few shots into him. He's pushed up into not the greatest position, but at this point I'm just deciding it's time to load the heat rounds and try and go through the lower plate of the E100, or maybe we can even try and track him. You can see we're starting to deal a little bit of damage. You can do this with this tank, and you can actually bait E100s quite nicely as well, since you do have the premium heat rounds, which are always great against those German heavy tanks that you see in the game. So it allows you to go through the front of the E100 turret, which is really nice. You know, you can utilize that yourself with a lot of these medium tanks, and you can see we're just basically farming up this guy. There's not a lot he can do. He can either try and push, and of course when he's pulling back as well, he's exposing that lower plate, and we can just farm it up really nicely. But yeah, not as I say, not a lot he can really do other than kind of try and push forward and actually go out of the way of us. But yeah, we're just peppering him, and this is exactly what you want to do in the Action X in this brawling position. Remember, we are like the most forward medium tank in the game right now, and you can see a lot of these vehicles just trying to pull up on us, trying to be a nuisance, and they're really not having too much fun because, yeah, we do have the 10 degrees of gun depression that you'd have with most of the British medium tanks, and of course, when you combine that with the turret armor, when you're using that gun depression, that cupola does actually get hidden, and so the armor is actually okay. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to bounce any of these tier 10 tank destroyers, since they'll probably just go straight through the front of the turret anyway, but you can still have really good ones. But the main problem is that if the team support is lackluster, or they're just not literally supporting you, yeah, people will just YOLO you, and they can quite easily do that. Your DPM isn't that much better than some of the heavies in the game. I mean, it's better, and it will be able to dominate, but it's not like crazy or anything like that, so don't expect that. The 705 there actually bounces off of us because he kind of YOLO'd in. I don't know what this FE4202 was doing. Of course, the opposite number, I guess, from the British mediums. But he obviously gets punished for trying to YOLO against the old team, basically. And this is what makes this tank work, is the team support. And there's a very fine line between having too little team support and having too much, and yeah, you really do rely upon your team, which is not a good thing, especially when you're trying to be consistent. And it's probably why this is probably not one of the most used medium tanks in the game, and certainly why this tank is probably one of the least favourite of most of the kind of aggressive medium tank player line, because it just doesn't have the armour. Yet again, just the YOLO wagon of this FE4202. I don't know what he was doing, man, but yeah. Oh god. Either way, we're just holding down this ridgeline. The key problem is that we are gigantic, and luckily, touch wood, so far we've not received any artillery hits, but if artillery hits you in this thing, it is not fun whatsoever. You will be penned most of the time because you just do not have the armour, and the engine deck is huge. The armour sucks, and yeah, from above it is just a big slab of hit points that the enemies will love to farm. Now unfortunately the E100 here is of course out in the open. He fires and that allows us to get the side of his turret. I'm trying to think of ways in which we can kind of take him out. We're just going for that final shot of damage. We go for the tracks easy as you like it. 3,860 damage and 1,900 assist. Really nice to see. And of course we're just going to hide a little bit, make sure that the artillery doesn't take us out. And just avoid any of those shells. There are still 3 tank destroyers on the enemy team, plus 2 mediums. There's also a 705 there, so we've got to be a little careful. And so we sit behind the house, we just spot for our team, and hopefully our team will be able to do something in this game. I don't want to do anything too risky, as you don't really want to YOLO in this tank, since you're not going to bounce anything and most people will be able to pen you. The artillery misses by a country mile, but still does damage to us because yay, artillery. But either way, starting to pull a bit further back, and maybe we'll be able to kind of find someone, find anyone, just basically try and spot someone, because at this point we're not really doing a whole lot, and when you're in an Action X you want to keep your gun firing, you want to keep kind of aiming towards your opponents and making sure that you are being a bit of a nuisance. You can see here, just trying to get the enemy tanks, and of course the absolutely balanced class decides that they're going to hit us, set us on fire for pretty much the rest of our hit points, and yay, and then we get finished off by a TVP hitting the most tiny shot, and of course I was very triggered as he didn't even see me wait. Usually I'll wait till the end of the battle to play another one, but yeah, I was obviously not in the best of moods, and that pretty much sums up the Action X, I think. I mean, I could show you better gameplays where we do more damage, but I just don't feel it's really that representative of the tank, and you saw really pretty much everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly of this tank, and of course there, the better of the two in my opinion, the FE4202. But hopefully this gives you a good indication as to the Action X. It's been a while since we've done a last review, and I think we actually did one when we first came back to YouTube in like 2019 or 2020. We did a review of the Action X, so maybe I'll link that. I mean, it's quite old and I don't know what it's going to be like, but the damage results will be better than this one for sure. But yeah, if you want to see some more kind of ace tanker gameplay, then that's the one to go to. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I hope you join me in the next replay coming soon. Goodbye.